Hey friends, welcome to our Power is Within podcast. I'm your host, Chasmith, and my mission for this podcast is to inspire you to take your power back and to realize that you are the healer that you have been looking for all along. I do want to start by saying how much I appreciate your support. If you are listening and you find this content from my guest valuable, please consider leaving a 5-star rating and a quick review on Apple Podcasts. You can also share your favorite episode on social media and tag me at our Power is Within, or you can always click the link at the bottom of the show notes to the virtual tip jar. As far as this week's challenge, I'm going to keep it super simple. The challenge is to every day when you wake up, say to yourself out loud, today is a great day for a great day. That's it. Just say it. Say it when you don't believe it. Say it with enthusiasm and say it every day. Say it because why not say it? And that's all. Have fun. Let's see what happens. Our guest today is Rachel Sair. Rachel is here to share with us her story of how she's drastically improved her migraines since working with a mind-body coach, who is one of our previous guests, Jim Prussack. If you have not heard of him, I strongly encourage you to click the link in the show notes to listen to the episode I had back in the day with him as one of the podcast guests. He is awesome. And Rachel is awesome too. I love chatting with her, and she has so many wins, and I'm excited for everyone listening to get to hear some of these wins today. And if you suffer from migraines, then maybe there could be some insight and inspiration here for you to trust and believe that healing is possible for you too. Please enjoy this chat. All right, Rachel, thank you so much for being here with me today and everybody who is listening.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I am so excited. I'm excited personally, really, to hear your story because I know that you're going to be sharing a testimonial of recovering from chronic migraines, and I know that's one of those tricky ones that in my own experience and from having conversations with various other people, it's one of those ones that is a little bit trickier sometimes to really overcome. So this is going to be, I think, a really good story for us to hear.
Mm-hmm.
Yay.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. There aren't too many stories that I've heard out there about, using TMS for migraines. And some people have reached out to me since I shared my story for the first time just a couple of weeks ago. And yeah, I'm glad to try to help, hopefully.
Yay. All right. Well, that's actually how we're going to start today is we're literally just going to let you kind of get in and introduce yourself and give us a bit of background on kind of where you came from and what led you into and how you discovered the work of Dr. John Sarno and TMS and what your process was like through the recovery.
Okay. All right. So, it started, the migraine started when I was a kid. I would get them every once in a while. I just remember, I don't know if it was even probably just a couple times a year, laying in my parents' bed in the dark and having a washcloth on. And then eventually it would get better. And, let's see. But the year after I graduated college, which in retrospect, looking, it's interesting to see that it wasn't when I graduated. It was a year after because I got my teaching degree for the year after I graduated from college. So I didn't start working until a year after that, or like my real career job working in a school. And that's pretty much when the migraines started, was with the teaching career that now it's all easy to see. Well, not easy, but much easier to figure out in retrospect that once I started teaching, I was on this track of, I wanted to be the perfect teacher who had inspired me. And it was just obviously a lot of stress. And I think the nonstop schedule of the full day and not having a break and kind of, always putting on a happy face, it was not very helpful, obviously. And, I nobody would ever know when my head hurt, which was starting to get to be most of the time. And so that was when I was about 22 or so, and now I'm 45. And it was only a couple years ago in the spring of 2020 that somebody mentioned TMS to me. And so I'm indebted to that person forever. That would be my friend Jeannie Colwyn, who is a personal coach and breathwork facilitator. And she overcame her own story of chronic pain. And I was just lucky that she was in my life. Otherwise, over 20 years, nobody had ever mentioned anything like this to me before. So, um, let's see. And, over those 20 years, I had seen all, quote unquote, the best migraine specialists, the best neurologists in Chicago. There's a clinic that many people travel to go there, but nothing ever helped. I tried all the preventatives, and let's see, when Botox first became a thing for migraines, I appealed to the health insurance company to get it covered, but that didn't make a difference. And for some reason, like 15 years later, when I moved to Barcelona, I tried Botox again when a doctor suggested it, when she thought, oh, it wouldn't make a difference that it didn't work the first time. And then I was paying out of pocket for it. So, I understand how much we've all invested, if you have chronic pain, how much we've invested, time wise. This has been, 20 years, and also financially, paying doctors who aren't in networks just to, get a chance at something of a better life. And who knew that, it would take basically, Jeannie started by telling me about a book she had read that I had to read, The Great Pain Deception. I'm sure you're familiar with that one.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's by Steve Ozanich, I think is how you say his name. And so that was the first step, but it took me a while to even get going on that first step. I like that I have like our text messages when she first mentioned it to me in like February of 2020. And, again, it's like, God, why did I wait so long to even start reading? Not until that summer of 2020. And then I started taking her breathwork classes, which was just great to carve out some, personal time and to learn about breathwork. And then in the spring of 2021, and about March, she thought, okay, you've started reading the book, and now, it's time to really look into those emotions that it talks about, that Dr. Sarno, had said is all behind that chronic pain. And so, we decided obviously that, we were too close of friends for me to really work with her like that. So she referred me to Jim Prussack, who I know has been on your show and
Yeah.
is a TMS coach. And I did maybe 3 months of sessions with Jim about once a week. And by the time that I started in March 2021, and by the middle of June, I was in a completely different place. And like every week would just be, getting a little bit better. I had been taking, right before starting with him, or at the point that I started with him, I was doing that. Botox was every 3 months. I had started, one of the newest preventatives in migraine medicine are these new injections called CGRPs. And that was a monthly injection. And then up to 10 times a month, I was taking triptans that get rid of the migraine pain. And on the days that I didn't take that, then I'd be taking basically Valium a number of times a day. So I had lots going. And the first step was Jim just, I don't know if it's holding my hand or how, but I also like having the text messages with Jeannie, because I got to see that, looking back, that in, I think it was like around February of 2020, so about a year earlier, I she had said to me, if you get into this TMS, I really think you can get off of your meds. And I was like, okay, Jeannie. I said, I don't think I can get off the meds, honestly, really. Just getting down to taking like 10 days of this medication was enough of like a great change for me. But now am not, I stopped Botox in March, when I started with Jim, was the last time that I did Botox, because I understood, like, all right, if you're gonna buy in, you got to go all in. The Valium, he, encouraged me to stop, and I didn't take it again after March of that year. And then the monthly injections for the CGRPs, I stopped in the summer. So, and now every once in a while, I'll just take the triptans as, like, when I need a little bit of help, a little rescue. But I am not taking any preventatives, and that's the first time in 20 years. So um, it's been a huge change. And the hardest thing, I think, to try to explain to anyone who hasn't really gotten into the TMS process is like, how did you do it? Because of course, that was what I wanted from Jeannie. Like, okay, how did you do it? And she'd be like, just be patient. It's a process. And it's definitely not easy to explain, but takes a long time and a lot of patience. Well, maybe not a long time. It just depends, on the person, but it's a journey, as they say.
Yeah. And so what was working with Jim like? Like what kind of things did you guys do together to help you process everything emotionally?
hmm Definitely looking back at, what was going on with those repressed emotions, and exploring, my emotions in the day to day, where, I would explain to him some situation going on in my life, and he would say, well, how do you feel about that? And I'd be like, I don't know, it's okay. And he's like, no, 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 like, really pushing me a little bit more, like, how does that feel? And also, really teaching me how to connect when the pain starts, like exploring what's going on beyond the pain. So this week it was a really not good head week, actually, which it was made me feel a little bit of the imposter syndrome, like, oh god, I'm going to be on this podcast sharing my story, and yet I've had to take the triptans a couple times this week. And but when I was looking at my emotion, well, I was starting some new classes I teach. So when I moved to Barcelona, I stopped teaching in school, and now I do my own private classes mostly. And but I also work for an academy, and so then I don't get to choose my classes. And I also, had to take on classes this week that are just part of my job that I don't get paid extra for. So I was kind of, resenting it, not looking forward to it. It, takes up time in my schedule, like all this, just these emotions about that. And then, feeling, a little bit nervous about, you're going to be on this podcast for the first time. This is only the second time I've shared my story, and just kind of keep looking at that. And I think it's easier sometimes, when at the beginning of the pain, to look at what's going on. And I can think about how, I really don't feel like going out with, this friend tonight. Like, I'm a little bit concerned she's going to talk about this, or, I might be nervous about, I don't know. It's a little bit, I guess, hard to put into words the right way, but really trying to get to what's the root that's, going on when that pain starts.
Mm.
Um,
So
oh,
did you
mhm,
notice a pattern, like now that you've been kind of doing more deep work into being aware of your emotions, being present with your emotions,
mhm,
have you seen like a pattern? Is there like a certain kind of theme of what's playing in the background of your mind when these like as like a
Mhm.
when these migraines are popping up? Like, is there
Yeah.
specific triggers that you're noticing, like emotional triggers?
Right. A lot of times it's I'm feeling uncomfortable. It might be um, a little bit of an anxious kind of feeling or a little bit nervous where I have to, remind myself where that was happening with some classes of students that I would have to remind myself, like, you know, they like you do a good job, and if you're running 5 minutes late or something, that's okay. They run late, it's okay. Just have to keep talking to myself and working through it. So trying
Mm-hmm.
to kind of settle down that nervous system. A lot of times it's if I'm feeling uncomfortable, if I don't want to be in a situation, but otherwise it was like um, just with classes where I was surprised that I would feel that way, that I when I really looked at myself or was talking to myself, basically I would find, why am I feeling nervous about this,
Mm-hmm.
um so
And it sounds like with Jim, he really helped you to peel back like these unconscious emotions, not even the repressed ones from your
mhm.
past, but like present day
Oh
unconscious
yeah,
emotions, like
that's
where
right.
we kind of disassociate. And like you said, like, oh no, everything's good, I'm fine.
Yes,
But
exactly.
like, if you get really deeper down to it,
Hmm.
where we're not like afraid to own it and be like, no, I'm actually
Hmm.
feeling really freaking pissed right now, or I'm really
Yes,
resentful, or this makes me really
exactly.
angry.
Hmm. Yeah,
um,
you gotta, yeah, really face these things that I don't want to, like, why don't you want to go out with your friend later, like, what is going
right.
on,
Well, then you look at the underlying, because if I admit these feelings of resentment or anger or like, I don't want to go hang out with my friend,
Hmm.
what really underlies that? Or probably some internal judgment, like I'm a bad
Exactly.
person or I'm not
Yes.
good enough or,
Uh-huh.
yeah,
A
like,
100%, there's that judgment there.
mm-hmm,
Um, and yeah, so, also with Jim in the first session, I remember saying to him, like, I think the hardest part for me when I started reading The Great Pain Deception was, I think the first chapter starts with, facing trauma. And I was just like, and I said to Jim, like, I've led such a privileged life. Like, I don't have any trauma, which is, I'm laughing now because, once you learn what it really means, that there's all different kinds of trauma and, big T, little T's, that it seemed a little ridiculous to then, say, now that I've learned about it more, to say, like, oh, I haven't had any trauma. It's like, okay, we've all had stuff. Maybe you haven't had, the most talked about, the biggest kind, but, obviously there's stuff going on there.
yeah, absolutely. Always.
Mhm.
Yeah. We're, as humans, that's just part of life.
Exactly.
Um, Now, did you notice because you had them, you made mention that you had them when you were young,
Hmm.
maybe not as severe, and then they kind of seemed like they trickled away or lessened, and then came back with vengeance in your
Hmm.
20s. Did you, did you notice a pattern from when you were young? Like, do you see what you were going through in your life at that age, in your
Hmm.
youth years? Like, was it the same, or was there a different pattern?
Um, Looking back, it could have been, little things going on at home. I don't know when I was really young, but I know when I got to high school that um, I had at least a migraine on the first day of school every year, and it's like, oh, it was, new situation, new things, and when I started high school, I wasn't really friends with anyone. I had gone to a private school before that, so I can imagine why I had one on the first day of high school.
Hmm.
Um, and just the change in schedule where all of a sudden it's like, you got to be going all day instead of, summertime.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah,
Stress
so
and
looking back,
pressure.
yeah,
Hmm.
exactly.
Yeah.
And not
Nervousness.
right. feeling
Yeah.
nervous, overwhelmed, and not knowing, what to do with that, with those emotions
Yeah,
or,
some
yeah.
insecurities like, "Oh, I
Hmm.
don't know anybody, what's it gonna
Definitely.
be like?"
Yes.
Did you have, do you have any like physical triggers, or is it really for you mostly emotional?
Now I know that it's all emotional. I thought there were a million triggers before, and it's really funny because none of those are triggers now. So, I can drink alcohol. Like, ooh, look at me. I can have, wine when I want. And, before it'd be like, I don't know, my head isn't feeling so great. I have actually a good story from recently about that. So, but to stay on the topic of triggers, there were so many that I thought I had to take. I was taking a medication before like vigorous exercise, thinking that I got exercise induced migraines. And now I have a trainer that works me harder than I, would ever push myself. And every once in a while, I'll, with my mask on, be beaming, smiling under that. We still wear masks here in Spain indoors. And it's just like I can't believe that I can push myself that hard, and it feels so good. Um, and let's see the other triggers. If I didn't eat right when I was hungry, and now it's like, oh, I'm hungry, and I can just stay hungry. It's okay. I don't have to, worry if I didn't carry something, a snack with me. Along with that exercise, it was like if I wouldn't even walk up the stairs. Like I live in a building that has an elevator, and that's not the most common thing in an older European city. And I would now it's like, I got stairs. I can just take the stairs. Look at me. Oh, my head. It's not perfect, but it doesn't make it any worse. Um, so anything that I thought, like would trigger it, now it's not an issue. So um,
Mm.
I think one of the huge things was learning to engage in life. I think that was one of Sarno's big things, is like move, like get back to your life. Just try to live. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Did you and Jim do anything to work around these physical triggers, or was it more just as you resolved old emotional patterns that you just started noticing in your life that the physical things weren't affecting you?
Yeah, it's definitely the second case that, as we work together, then I would just find like, hey, look what I'm doing that's not, causing anything. He even thought that, so a few weekends ago, I went away to Lisbon, Portugal for a long weekend. And and I only had like 2 weeks warning that a friend was going to be there. And, even planning a trip with like 2 weeks warning, just I felt so good when I was there, and that's just another huge vote of confidence that, wow, this is really working. But on the last night that I was there, it was my friend's first trip to Europe and her last night there. And after like a long day of touring, I just wanted to go lay down. But she was like, oh, I want to get a drink. Would you be up for that? And I'm like, I can't say no. So, we went to this bar, and I was so close to reaching in my bag to take a pill because I'm like, I just don't want to get a migraine. And then all of a sudden, I found myself ordering a glass of wine. And then, I went to bed with the same, little bit of pain, and woke up and felt completely fine. And I was like, oh my God, it's like, it's just life is good. It's amazing that, I can have that experience. So, ordering a
Yeah.
glass of wine. And so Jim was like, well, maybe that just helped you relax a little bit, stop.
Yeah,
Yeah,
probably.
exactly.
Yeah. That doesn't surprise me at all, especially if the migraines are if you notice a pattern of like pressure and nervousness, or like,
Hmm.
self-devaluation, insecurities and all that.
Hmm.
As a side note, I had migraines all through my childhood. They got worse as I got into my teen years. And then literally I went away to college. And what does everybody do in college? They make all these friends, they start drinking, they go out all the time, you know? And it's funny because when you really think about it, college, I worked
Uh-huh.
and I went to school full time.
Oh, wow.
That can be stressful.
Yes.
But what did I do every night? Hung out with my friends, had a couple beers. I
Mhm.
had virtually no migraines my
Yeah.
entire college experience, even
Yeah.
though I did so much and had so much demands. And I
Mhm.
genuinely believe it was, and I'm not saying like alcohol's good for you by any standard, but I think that for me, being a high stress, high strung person,
Mhm.
I had for the first time this outlet that allowed
Mhm.
me to not be stuck in my head and to like be more relaxed. And
Yeah.
it did something,
Yeah.
you know. No, we don't want that to be
Yeah.
the answer all the
Exactly.
time.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know what kind of message we're sending, but
Yeah. Wait.
it definitely, helped to have a way to relax,
Yeah.
but I'm sure I could find, a bubble bath or something else. It's just not as
Well, the idea
convenient.
is we work on the underlying emotions so they're
Mhm.
not so powerful and potent and strong anymore. And then you don't
Exactly.
really need
Right.
those outlets per se. I mean, I'm at a place now where I don't ever feel like I need something
Yeah.
to relax. Do you know what I'm saying? In the
Yes.
same way that I did once upon a time in my
Mhm.
life. But it was just a very interesting observation that helped
Mhm.
me to get to the root. Like, oh, there's a pattern. There's something, there's
Mhm.
a theme here. There's something going on.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, yeah, and for me it was like going from it thinking that it was a trigger to like, oh, it doesn't hurt me, Maybe
Right.
you know.
Well, and I'm so curious, like, did you, because a lot of times when we were doing this kind of work with the mind body stuff, we'll do like a graded exposure therapy. Did you have to do that with any of these triggers or not
No,
really?
not at all.
That's
Yeah.
so cool.
No, I mean with working out, I just got back into it. I think when I first started like with gym, I was working out on my own. So that definitely was a totally different level than working out with a trainer now. Where I'm like, oh my God, where every time he tells me to do something, I'm like, okay, sure, like that's not going to happen. And then, it's possible. So, um, but just no, nothing specific. It was just seeing that I could do all this. So, yeah.
That's awesome. Uh, okay. And then on another side note, did your migraines always present the same? Like, was it always the same pattern or was it different depending on the migraine or the day?
It was pretty similar. It would get to the point where I would wake up with some pain, and then it would just get progressively worse and worse. And to stop it, I would take usually a triptan, and then it would stop for a little bit, then, start up again, a little bit of pain at a time. And if I didn't take something, I imagine it would get to what I called like full blown,
Hmm.
level 10. And now I can see like, oh, I don't always need to take something, sometimes it just stays at that, very, very low level or even disappears from that, which is,
Yeah.
yeah, amazing.
But was it always one sided and always the same
Now,
side or did it vary or was it your whole head?
it totally varied. Yeah.
It
From
did.
one side, the other, all around.
Did you ever see patterns with that?
No, no. That's the interesting thing is that there is no pattern to it. There is no, specific trigger where some people have specific triggers. I didn't have any auras. Nausea would be some of the time, but not always.
Crazy.
Yeah. So, um, yeah, there was really nothing
No,
to
no
it.
rhyme or reason.
Exactly.
And so okay, so do you still work with Jim?
Yes, I do.
You
Yeah.
do? Okay.
Hmm.
So do you not do weekly anymore?
Exactly. So now I was getting into more like, once a month where I think I asked him a couple weeks ago, I'm like, I just kind of like it like as I feel like therapy is good and it's not, the traditional kind. And I like somebody knowing the TMS side of it. So it's like, do you mind if I just use you to talk, once a month, to kind of, in a way, purge or just get things out and have a sounding board? And it's like, yeah, whatever, and for me, it's also good just have these constant reminders and check in. So,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, it's so funny because somebody else, it they can really help us process what's going on that sometimes we can't pinpoint on our own. They can help us see
very
blind
much.
spots, or
Hmm.
you could say one thing and they could help you like
Hmm.
understand like really like what they're seeing from your perspective, like
Oh,
their
yeah,
perspective of what you're saying. Like it's just so
definitely.
helpful.
Yeah. And I like that Jim, gives me a lot of feedback. So I don't know, with traditional therapists, I had found like it was just a lot of me talking and not getting anywhere. And then it was just very different. I don't know if that's the realm of coaching or, if it was just him or what the difference was, but um, I don't know. Obviously, I found it extremely useful.
Yeah, whatever works for
Yeah,
you, right?
yeah. But a lot of people who have tried, like, everything that I had tried of reading the books, I watched many of like Dan Buglio's YouTube videos and
Mhm.
still like do, occasionally I'll see, oh, what's he, talking about now? I tried the journal speak and that Nicole Sachs talked about. And really for me, just working one-on-one with someone is totally worth it. I think a lot
Mhm.
of people are scared off thinking, well, how much is it going to cost? And it's like, um, I think we forget like how much we've invested. And then, where for me, this was the big turning point, the big difference, what, set me on a different path. And, you know, where I was willing to pay, out of pocket for Botox, but, getting nervous about paying for sessions that are, affordable. So for me, it's so worth it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's like we do have the power within us, but being supported by somebody else who can help
Hmm.
us tap into that is so powerful.
Definitely. And
Mhm.
I mean, I
Yeah.
definitely resonate with the name of your podcast of the power within, that it was, me that did it, but I couldn't do it 100% alone. I mean, we needed the knowledge from somewhere else. And then, um, you know, we all have our different ways of what works best, and
Yeah.
working one-on-one definitely has been the big change for me.
Yeah, and I bet it's been so fun to work with Jim because he's so cool.
He really
He's
is.
so great. Like I just love he puts out such great content, and he's got um yeah, he just has this like calming a bit like
Yes.
effect, and
A hundred
um
percent, yeah.
yeah, all his YouTubes are so fantastic. He just
Mhm.
really helps put things at ease. It's
Yeah.
really
It
great.
is.
It
Mhm.
was such a pleasure talking to him.
Yes.
So, in all this experience, what have been some of like the biggest, just kind of like things you've learned, like lessons that you've learned through all this?
Hmm. Um, yeah, how strong we really can be, where I got to the point thinking like, that there was really something wrong with me, that um yeah, I had always thought like, oh man, this is kind of strange, but when I die, like I need to donate my body to science. Like I've got a lot going wrong. And now it's like, oh no, they really wouldn't be able to learn that much, It's like, well, I could still do that, but for completely different purposes. Um, I think just learning a lot about myself, and that I don't need all these crutches, all the medication that I was taking that wasn't doing anything, that you know didn't help. And just how much healthier I feel in every way, mentally, physically. So it's incredible, but it doesn't have, an endpoint. This is an ongoing process and an ongoing story. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Hmm.
And I think that's true for all of us because if we understand the mind body connection, then we know that we're all humans. Like, I mean, we're all
Mhm.
having this human experience, which
Right.
includes emotion, and that doesn't end as long as we're
Mhm.
breathing. So it's very natural then for us to have things intermittently come up. I think
Mhm.
the beauty is having tools and knowing how to react and respond, and manage what comes up in a different way that's more, um, that's going to serve us better.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, I
And now
agree.
you have that.
Mhm. Yeah, so a lot of, continuing to work with Jim is also just keep reinforcing those messages. I'm reading, more books on TMS, just again, just reinforcing the message and getting the message in different ways too.
And so, what have been some of the helpful books for you?
Well, probably mostly Sarno's books, and I was thinking that I should probably read The Great Pain Deception again. Right now, I started reading, I think, Dr. Schechter's Think Away Your Pain, that seems to kind of approach it maybe a little bit differently. I've started a bunch of the different ones, like Alan Gordon's The Way Out, just kind of seeing what's offered in very similar, but also a little bit different ways.
Mhm.
Um,
Has anyone specifically resonated for you?
Um, Probably in Sarno's and, well, in The Great Pain Deception, where it seems like kind of a summary of different books in a way.
Hmm.
Um, I think what really resonated was seeing the personality traits. And I think I just got to that point at the beginning of Dr. Schechter's book, also, where he mentions, that kind of worrying personality, but also perfectionism. Um, so yeah,
Gotcha.
yeah.
If you were going to recommend a book for anybody who's listening who's not familiar with TMS, or mind body
Mhm.
syndrome, what book would you want them to start with?
I think that maybe one of the starters would be Sarno's. Is it the Mind Body Prescription?
Hmm.
I think that seems like a good starter, just because the first one I read was The Great Pain Deception, but I got really stuck on that first chapter talking about trauma. And it's
Hmm.
also extremely long and dense, but I think it's worthwhile. So I know somebody who's starting with that now. And I just said, you just read it a little bit at a time. It's not one that you're just trying to race through. You just take it in little portions, however it sounds best, however it feels right.
Right. Yeah, that was
Hmm.
my first book too. My first
Yeah.
introduction to the world of TMS. And like so many of us, it was like, oh, I'm writing on every page.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Are you at a place yet where you feel like, I know some people get here and some people don't really, but
Mhm.
do you feel like you've had any major shifts where on some level, rather than like cursing your migraines, you can see
Mhm.
them as like a gift?
Yeah, it's hard to see, sometimes because of the whole 20 years of my life that,
Yeah.
was gone, but not quite gone, but, that I wasn't fully living.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, I mean, the way that I live now, when I am having good days almost all the time, it's like, I don't know. It's like I'm seeing the world in a whole new way, with awe, and, experiencing going to Lisbon and having this weekend with a friend, that um, just being able to experience that fully and be in the moment and not have this constant distraction of not feeling well. So, where you're not like really present because, you're distracted by this pain that, um,
Yeah.
so just being able to totally be there and really love it. And um you know every experience now just feels that way. So um yeah, it's a gift in the way of, like, how I experience life now, where I feel like maybe other people possibly just go through the motions that this is just your day, where I'm like, God, stopping and thinking about how great I feel and how, everything that I can participate in. And
Yeah, like maybe appreciating the small things different
definitely.
now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
oh, to be able to do this pain free or to not have
Mm-hmm.
to worry or to be able
Yeah.
to say yes. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
so
it's
different.
the saying yes is huge. My
Hmm.
friend saying, I'm going to be in Lisbon in 2 weeks, can you meet me? Yes, without, hesitation, and not having to think about even, packing medication. And that was not obviously not convenient or fun when I was taking those monthly injections, like trying to figure out how to, what I would need to even get them between countries or things like that, or keeping it cold in an ice pack. And how do you bring an ice pack through security? Like all that stuff that's just so unnecessary. So,
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah. So you definitely did still utilize the good old ice packs, the ice pack method.
Well, that was specifically for carrying the injection, having to keep it, at the right temperature.
Oh,
But
gotcha.
yeah, ice packs, I mean, for pain relief, yeah, ice definitely helps a lot. And oh God, I spent so much money on all the different kinds that, you know, once I found the best one, like on Amazon, it's like, okay, this one works, but then, the Velcro fades away. You got to get another one. And yeah, I have so many at back at my parents' house that I'm like, okay, what do I do with these now?
Hmm.
So yeah, it's like, um,
So aside from everything we just talked about,
mhm,
which is like just a whole new way of approaching and experiencing life and appreciating it, has this like journey you've been on to into recovery shifted anything else in your life, or what are you up to? You're still just you said you're teaching
mhm,
privately in Barcelona and you have the academy, and that's your intention is to keep teaching and
mhm.
doing your thing.
Yeah, definitely. It's maybe made me a little bit more open to, I'm single and it's like, oh, I could try dating again, like,
Yeah, you
it,
don't have to cancel dates because of a migraine.
exactly. Yeah, the whole canceling. That was the whole thing with getting a trainer, also, that I know that I like working with a personal trainer, but I stopped for years when it was like, well, I can't commit to that. It's that whole committing to something that now it's like, yeah, I just go. So it works. It's just that whole being able to say yes to anything
Hmm.
and not have to worry about not being able to,
Hmm.
participate
Yeah.
makes a big
And
difference.
because you have this tools and this new awareness, if you are starting to notice like pain creep in when you say
Mhm.
yes to like a date or something, you might just be able to like, you're going to have this ability now to go inward and notice if there's just some insecurity or pressure you're putting on yourself.
Oh yeah.
Um, as you explore this new outlet, that then you'll be able to actually like deal with and allow it to express itself and not get stuck, like you're actually going to be more aware.
Hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
More aware, and then as a result, like more present too. So
Yep.
yeah, it's
Absolutely. Super
win-win.
awesome. So wins all the way around.
Exactly.
Yeah. And okay, so I ask if you've listened to some of my podcast episodes now, so there's
Yes.
one question I ask everybody at the end, which is, if you could share one message with the world and only one message for the rest of your life, what message would you want to share with the world?
Yeah.
And it
Um,
can be anything. It doesn't have
mhm.
to be about TMS.
Well, I mean, for me with TMS, it might, translate into beyond that. But I think, none of this would have been possible if I hadn't been open to this message, open to listening to my friend Jeannie when she mentioned it to me, although I wasn't that open at first. So, it might be then the message might be on the friend side where, like, don't give up after the first attempt, because she didn't, just give up and never mention it to me again. Thank goodness, because, my first reaction when she told me about TMS was that I was completely offended. So that, I was like, how that's awesome that it worked for you, but my pain is real. I don't know what you're talking about, but mine is different. And now I know, like, of course, yeah, I understand that the pain is real, but we now know that the cause is completely different than what's been approached in the traditional mainstream medicine. So for me, like, it's a big message of, if you're open, you just don't know how amazing life can be. So, and sticking at it and trying something different. So, I did the books, I watched videos, I listened to lots of different podcasts, but, for me, taking that next step of working one on one was uh, the big shift as well.
Right. Awesome.
Yeah.
And do you have anything else that you feel is like pertinent that you want to share with anyone who might be listening, who is at where you were at in, early 2020 that maybe I haven't asked you, but
Mhm.
you would have liked to hear?
That you can't rush it, that it can, it's it could take some time, but just knowing that, just imagine what your life could be like, a few months from now, let's say 3 months from now, and then what it's going to be like a year from now. It's just the difference should keep you motivated and on that path of just exploration and getting the most knowledge you can. And um, it's just amazing to look back at the difference of, where I was and what I can do now and how I can enjoy life now. So I think that there's a lot of hope, and we get stuck in that hopeless part of it. And just knowing that, other people have done this and gotten there, and that you can too. It's possible. It really is.
Yeah,
Hmm.
absolutely. Thank you. And thank you for being willing to, come on your first podcast.
Yeah.
Woohoo! Now you're a
Oh.
pro. Now you're pro. Now next time if you get invited to a podcast or something, you're not going to have the same nervous response because you're going to be like, "Oh, I got this. I did it before. Can do it again."
Hope so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and thanks for sharing your story and your message, and I really appreciate you coming on and giving people out there who might be suffering from migraines hope that there are options out there. And
Well, I want to thank you for having me on and for what you do, because you have so many different tools that you explore in all the different episodes. So I think that that's helpful too, that there isn't just one option.
mhm.
If this isn't right for somebody, there are many other ways to go at it.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And if anybody did just have like a personal question or wanted to reach out to you or connect to
Mhm.
you, are you on any social media platforms?
I am on Facebook and Instagram, or they can just email me directly also.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can drop the links to all that in the show notes.
Okay.
And all right. Well, it was such a pleasure.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's a wrap. I hope you enjoyed the chat that Rachel and I had, and do not forget to wake up every day and say today is a great day for a great day. You never know. Maybe saying that every day and starting to believe it will be the recipe to make this whole week a great week. Until next time.